Welcome to episode 4 of the Geetar Rob channel, the guitar channel for the rest of us. Thank you very much. I want to let you know this week's episode is brought to you by the chord D. Chord D is a fine chord. Please use it wisely. Hi everybody. Welcome to another riveting video about the heady world of guitar-generated noise. This week we're going to talk about the interfaces between your brain and your guitar.
Your hands.
That's right, your hands. You ever think about that? You know, when you're buying a guitar, you consider a lot of things go in the process of selecting a guitar, and acoustic, electric, which brand, which model. Do you want electric? Do you want one pickup, two pickups, three pickups, four pickups, five pickups, six pickups, seven pickups? Do you want single coil pickups? Do you want humbuckers? Do you want a combination of the two? You want coil tapping, coil splitting, maybe you want a whammy bar, but you probably don't think of which guitar is best suited for my hands. Well, how big are your hands? How strong are they? How tough are your hands? You know, hands are kind of like feet, come in lots of different sizes, but because you wear shoes all the time and you don't wear gloves all the time, most people don't, the shoe manufacturers seem to go ahead and create a lot of different sizes of shoes for your feet, and just a small difference in the size of a foot makes another shoe size, and so there's a lot of variety of shoe sizes. Now, if you think about it, hands are also come in a lot of different sizes, but generally there's only a few sizes of gloves. And you kind of wonder, why don't they say, well, does it fit like a glove, or does it really fit like a shoe? And seems like just about every other body part, when it comes to clothing or covering, has a shoe or a clothing size variety for it that is just, there's lots of sizes for different things, but your hands, not so many. And that seems kind of weird, because that's the most nameable part of your body. Seems that guitar sizes, like gloves, are limited too. And you don't find guitars hanging on racks when you go in, set it up by size. And when you go in the store, the clerk comes up, hi, how can I help you? I'm looking for a guitar. And he says, okay, what size guitar would you like to play? And guitars do come in various sizes, but that's not the whole story, because they don't all fit all hands. And we're going to talk about that right now. What size guitar do you wear? Well, you want one that fits. You don't want one that's way too big for you or way too small for you. People are adaptive and they can adjust to different environments, but why should you if you have other options? Consider that you're going to run a race, and you're the short person and you're running a race against the really tall person. They don't change the mile race. If you're going to run a mile or whatever distance you're going to run, you can see that in a steps per mile. A short person has to do a lot more work to cover that same distance. And so you ask, well, maybe you should get something that fits you better. And that's something we need to consider when you're taking up a guitar. Hands do come in different sizes, and expecting one person to play the same guitar as another has its limitations when you come to extreme in sizes of having really large hands or really small hands. Today we're going to kind of concentrate on the people with the smaller hands. And you have to understand that if you're going to play the same guitar that a person with large hands plays, you're going to have to do a lot of extra work. You can adapt to it, you can adjust to it over time, but do you really have to do that? Let's talk about some of the aspects of guitar constructions that have are set up for people with different kinds of hands, and it's something you may not have thought about before. 4 parts of construction of a guitar besides just the body that have an application or that are some are suited for hand size. Those aspects of construction are the scale, the nut width, the radius, and the neck shape, and those all have to do with the neck. So first thing we're going to talk about is the scale. Now the scale is just nothing more than the distance of the string from the nut to the saddle. How long is that neck? How long is the playing surface? You can measure it that way, or you can measure it from the inside of the nut to the center of the 12th fret and double that. That's the scale of the neck. What difference does that scale make? Well, the shorter guitar scale, the narrower are the distances between the frets. As you can see here, people with smaller hands would have a much easier time spanning several frets on the short scale guitar than on a long, not really full scale, but a longer scale guitar. So that can come in, be important when you think about down the road when you're playing the guitar and you pick up some of the harder to play chords. Some of them span several frets. And if you have small hands, it's going to be easier for you to play these chords if you have a shorter scale on the neck of the guitar. And also remember, there's a sweet spot in each fret where the note that you're playing sounds the best. This is also demonstrated by a lot of times when you put a capo on a guitar, when you start using a capo, where do you put the capo? They're going to show you're going to put it right behind the fret. That's going to, not on the fret, but a little bit behind it, is going to give you the best tonal size, the tonal sound. So, what we next need to talk about is how big is your hand? Well, you can measure your hand by spreading it out over a ruler, a tape measure. Measure from the tip of your thumb to the tip of your pinky and take that measurement, and you can put in this handy little chart here. And if you can see the size of your hands and relate that to the neck scale, give you a pretty good idea what scale neck is best suited for your hand size. Most adults are going to have hand sizes measuring over 8 inches or so, which means you're going to be able to play just about any normal scale guitar. There are several guitars we'll talk about in a second that have kind of common scales that people like to use. If you have smaller hands, though, you're going to have to try to find guitars with necks that are built to the scale you're looking for. And we do have kind of a little list here of the scale lengths that are available on different models by different manufacturers. And you can see they go from even some smaller than 24 inches and all the way up to full-size bass guitars. But if you're going to play a 6-string guitar, the 2 most common sizes you're going to run into that are most popular is when you get into your Gibson, Les Paul, SGs, 335s. You're going to find very common scale for those guitars is a 24.75. Now, a lot of people like Fender stuff. They like Stratocasters, Telecasters, and you're going to find those guitars are going to have a 25.5-inch scale. Like I said, people with hands that measure over that 8-inch, they probably can suitably play the 25.5-inch scale pretty easily. But if you have smaller hands, you may want to go for a shorter scale guitar. Note that when you get above 25.5, those bigger, longer scale guitars are either going to be a bass guitar or they're going to be a specialty guitar like a baritone guitar. And if you are a bass player, don't worry about if you've got smaller hands. There are short scale basses available for people with smaller hands to play. Next, let's talk about the nut width. And that is simply how wide is the neck. As you can see here, there are different widths of the neck, and the narrower necks with the narrower nut width are going to be easier for people with small hands to wrap their hands around. People with larger hands probably would have a difficult time playing a really skinny neck. They just wouldn't have enough room to maneuver on it. But for smaller hands, the narrower nut is a good choice. And you can see the difference there just by compared to the size of a penny. It is normal for electric guitars to have on average a narrower nut than an acoustic guitar. And the widest necks you're going to find out there are going to be your classical guitars, who could have a nut width that's over 2 inches. So that's something to keep in mind. When you're thinking about selecting a guitar, the first thing we looked at is scale, then we're considering the nut width. Now we'll discuss the radius of the guitar's neck. Radius is just simply a description of how curved the guitar fingerboard is. A lot of people, when they look at a distance, don't really know that a guitar's fingerboard is not flat, it is curved. That curve is called radius, and it just is an expression of the size of the radius of a circle that would be produced if you extended the curvature of the neck out to a full 360 degrees. What difference does that make? Well, the smaller the radius, the smaller the circle, the more curved the fingerboard, which may fit smaller hands a little bit better when you're going wrapping around for chording and stuff. Now, if you have bigger hands, you'd want a flatter, wider fingerboard, and also be advised that for chording, a curved radius, a smaller radius, is fine for chording. If you're going to do a lot of picking, get string bending, playing lots of leads, lots of shredding, you're probably going to go for a larger radius neck. Another thing to be aware of when it comes to guitar necks for your hand size is the shape of the neck. Some neck shapes allow for smaller hands to have a better grasp around them. You can see some of these necks are pretty thin, some of them are pretty large. The C, the D are usually better for people with smaller hands, especially the slim tapered D and the modern C may fit people with smaller hands better than some of the larger guitar neck shapes. And so you just add these 4 factors up: the scale, the nut width, the shape, and the radius, help you define which guitar may fit your hands the best. Something else to consider on this: when you buy your guitars, it'll come with a set of strings. And here you can see a little graphic. When you go online and you want to research a guitar, go to the manufacturer site or the site for the sales, like Guitar Center or Musician's Friend, and look at the specifications of the guitar neck. And you can see right there, and just in one little area, they're going to tell you the shape, they're going to tell you the scale, they're going to tell you the radius, and they're going to tell you the nut width. And all that stuff's going to be important for you to know to see how well that's going to fit your hands. Now, as we were saying, guitar strings is another thing to consider, because the guitar strings come in thicker and thinner gauges. And for people with smaller hands, thinner gauge strings like that on the right, the 8 through 38, they're light gauge strings. They're easier for somebody with a small hand to press and hold down. If you got big, strong hands, you can probably go for the heavier gauge strings and not wear your hands out trying to make chords. One other factor about when it comes to guitar playing, and we talked about this in our initial episode, was fingernails. You're going to have to cut your fingernails. That's just no way to get around it. I know it not pleasing for some people. They don't want to cut their fingernails off real short, but when it comes to playing guitar, you're going to have the best success earlier if you don't have a long piece of fingernail in between the end of your finger and the fingerboard. Keep them trimmed. Anytime I get a little white line at the end of my fingernail where it's grown noticeably, I go ahead and trim it back. There are instances where you don't clip all of your fingers all the way back, like if you're going to play classical guitar. You may want to leave the fingering hand fingernails a little long. They actually serve as guitar picks, free picks, permanently glued to the end of your fingers. So that's something to consider if you're going to be a classical guitarist. One thing you're going to discover, and we talked about this on the first time we had an episode on, and that is calluses. They look kind of gross, but calluses are your friends, and they are a necessary part of playing the guitar. They are the body's natural reaction to trauma. As you play the guitar, you're going to mash your fingers down on these strings, wire strings that are stretched out to pretty good tension, and to hold them down is you're going to have to mash them, and it's not going to be comfortable when you first start, and especially if you haven't determined or developed the proper touch. You don't have to hold the string and mash it through the back of the neck. But on that journey to learn that touch, you're going to damage your fingers by bruising them. And through this constant traumatization, your fingers are going to react and grow calluses, and you want those calluses. They are your friends. How long it's going to take you initially to grow these calluses depends on how often you play, what kind of physical condition you're in. Are you older? Are you younger? The bottom line is be patient and stay at it. Your fingers are going to hurt when you first started, but as you develop those calluses, it's going to become more and more comfortable for you to play the guitar. Now, after you finally do get your calluses, and bear in mind, these calluses are calluses, not scars or scabs. You don't want to cut your fingertips sliding up and down the strings. You don't want to injure your finger. You're just causing a little bit of traumatization by putting that pressure on the string. Now, once you finally get them, how do you maintain them? Well, the big thing is keep playing every day. Play 30, 45 minutes at least every day to develop and hold on to those calluses. Remember this, no hot water. Don't soak your hands in hot water. Don't get in a hot tub or a hot bath and just bubble and boil. You're going to lose those calluses. You're going to have to start all over again. If you've got wet hands, you've just come out of the shower, washed dishes, whatever, give your fingers that chance to dry out properly. You don't want to play with wet fingertips. Let them dry out. If they're a little oily, if they don't dry out, a little drop of alcohol in the ends, kind of work it in and let them get rid of the excess moisture, and maybe oil. A little alcohol never prevented, well, we won't talk about that. So it's just something to be aware of. When you start playing, besides building up calluses, you're also going to see a change in the rest of your fingertip. And this traumatization and using your finger like it's never been used before will cause the pads on the end of your fingers to thicken. And here you can see the difference between my left hand ring finger and my right hand ring finger. That stubby bunch of tissue up there is directly as a result of guitar playing, and that's a good thing. That's going to make playing guitar longer, a lot more comfortable. So that's one of the things you want to happen. And warm up. This is kind of something I'll bring up to you, but when you before you start practicing every day, I like to warm up a little bit. Of course, I'm older and I don't have the circulation of a young person, but I start out my circulation warming up, just a few deep breaths, some stretching. Rub your forearms, get the circulation there. Rub your hands together like you're putting on lotion. Flex your fingers, stretch your fingers, get them loosened up and limbered. Like any athletic thing, your fingers are going to do physical competition against the keyboard or the fingerboard, and so you want them limbered and good circulation. That's going to enhance your performance and maybe prevent some injury. Then start out, reach over to your guitar Let's start some preliminary chords just to start warming up your fingers. I go from a G to a C9 to a G to a C9, drop down to a D. I'll incorporate those chords. I'll add in like a E minor 7th to a G9 to a G to a D. Then I'll rotate my wrist in a range of motion to going from a C major 7th. I got a little arthritis in this finger, so I like to go from here to an A minor, work that, liberate up that stiff finger, and then just incorporate it in my warm up from a C major 7th to a C major. And that kind of helps get everything ready to play. And it's a good way to start your practice session rather than starting out cold and maybe injuring your finger. Now, I've seen a couple gimmicks online, and I don't really endorse or not endorse these, but there's something that you may think about if you have limited dexterity or if you have some issues with mobility of your hands and you'd still like to play the guitar, you still want to be musical. I've never tried these. I don't know if they work or not or how well they work. I don't know what kind of limitations they put on playing. You may be able to chord all right. You certainly can't play melodies very well with them. But if you really have some issues with your hand, these might work. I don't know. If anybody who's tried these, put some remarks down below. Say, I don't even know what these things are. I saw them online and I thought, well, I don't know. They may work, they may not. Something that's out there that I'm really not really excited about. That looks like something a doctor ought to use. So, like I said, the other things, I don't know. If you have knowledge and you can recommend them, let us know here on the channel, and maybe somebody can benefit by your experience on this. Well, that's about it for your hands. The interfaces between your brain and your fretboard. Develop, take care of them, and it's a hard thing to say take care of because you don't know if you're a desk person or if you're a laborer, and the laborers, construction, and people like that certainly have a higher risk of injuring their hands, but do the best you can because a lifetime of playing is at your hands, so take care of that. Here, Geetar Rob, we want everybody to know that it is our strict policy to never deny anybody equal access to our subscribe button, to our bell button, or to that world famous up yours, Rob. We want you to make full use of those, and we appreciate it because every time you do that, I have a little puppy named Vernon. Vernon makes him a happy puppy when people subscribe and hit the bell and all that stuff. So that's about it for this time. Hopefully we will see you all real soon and have a good day.